Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to help transform relationships to love and life. The first question on the list is actually potentially an easy one and yet difficult all at the same time. Or maybe I should say it's a simple one. The question is how to overcome fear. And as many of you may know, I'm a Course in Miracles student. And so everything is based from fear and love, which is what the Course in Miracles talks about, sort of the idea of duality here on planet Earth. And so if it's not coming from a place of love, it's coming from a fear that you have. And the fears that we have are always about losing love or losing health or losing something. So it comes back to the idea of attachment. And the whole idea and the concept here is to be able to let go and to be in the flow. As you know, I didn't mean to be so poetic, but fear is really one of those emotions that we can't necessarily avoid because it's innate within us. Like fear can sometimes be a good thing in the sense that it makes us have a heightened sense of, maybe I should look at all my options here. But when we allow fear to take over our life and fear starts to run our life because all we can think about is, oh, what if? Then we're not in the now. So it's really about going back to that heart-centered space of being present and being in a whole heart. And when we're in a whole heart, it means that we're not in fear of everything that could potentially break our heart or make our heart ache. And so it's a very important lesson for us to learn as humans on Earth because, as I said, we're programmed to fear in so many ways, but instead we want to go back to the program of love. So whoever asked the question, if there's something specific that you're fearing, I would just dig into that and say, well, what is it? Like, what are my common fears? Is it a blanket of like, I'm always fearful about my health? Or is it a blanket of, I'm just anxious and fearful about the unknowns? And then it's about finding some tools and really digging into your spiritual toolbox to find things that can help you not jump to the fear-based thoughts, but replace them with more love-based thoughts and thoughts that aren't going to create that anxiety. Now, I do have the Awakening and Healing Handbook on bethbell.me. It's a great resource. It has so many different tips, tools, techniques, and modalities, many of which I've used to build my spiritual toolbox. And you might want to head over there and see if there's some tips and tools that help out. Now, if there was something very specific that you wanted me to address, please put it in the comments and I'll be happy to pick that up and give more specifics on any fear that you may have. So it's always fear versus love, and I recommend going to love. All right, let's go to question number 2. What is one effective way to deal on the spot with an addictive craving like alcohol, smoking, food, sex, porn, addictive relationships, compulsive self-judgment, the trance of unworthiness, body image, self-doubt, to name some that haunt me? Is there one tool I can call on to nip the craving in the bud? I find conscious breathing sometimes helps, but I feel a need for a few more on-the-spot tools that work. Well, this is a great question, and thank you for answering it, and thank you for being so vulnerable with the things that that you feel like you have some compulsion to. And I think one of the things that's so important about this is to recognize that. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for doing the breath work. I think that's a great first step. You know why? Because you're actually getting really present. You're like actually breathing into your body and feeling. But the next step is to also think about, okay, it's taken me, I don't know how old you are, 40, 50, 60 years to create all of these addictions. And so it's unnatural to think that we can like this just pop out of them. Now, I know you're asking for a tool, right? But I just want to keep that in mind that sometimes it feels like a lot of work, and it is, but we want to make this fun, right? We want to make all this deep spiritual work fun, all these addictive behaviors and the things that drive us crazy. We want to make them fun to unravel, because they're programs in our mind. They're ideas about what brings pleasure, about what makes us happy. when the simple things are oftentimes the things that make us happy. Now, there are some behaviors that you put in there because there's quite a few different, very different ones, and you might do very different things for each one of them. Some of them, I'll even dare to say that they're a little bit deviant, right? So they may be a little bit like below the belt, second chakra stuff. Things that are your creative centers, right? So if it's like sexual addictions, then I would recommend thinking about how that second chakra is very much your creative center, and finding things that you can do that are creatively oriented and based so that you can have that self-expression, but not necessarily in a way that is not a behavior you want to have, because you're suggesting these are behaviors you don't want. So if it's something different like self-doubt, you might come at that with just having some go-to affirmations, mantras, things that you want to be able to immediately switch out and say, I don't want that thought. That thought is from my lowest self. I want to hear something from my higher self. And you want to have that cheerleader within you. I know sometimes we think about cheerleader as a female. And so I mean this as your inner child cheerleader, whether you're a man or a woman. And you really want to be able to hear that voice speak more than that nagging voice, right? And oftentimes that nagging voice comes from our parents, dare I say, because it's the programs that we were born with, that our upbringing cultivated within us to judge ourselves for. Now, I'm not saying that you should blame your parents. Absolutely not, because you chose your parents coming into this lifetime. What I'm saying is that you got to get back to those programs and unravel it. And that's why there's no magic pill, there's no magic bullet to really anything in life, right? Because we're here to have an experience, and we're here to have an experience and sometimes unravel the experience and not do that same experience. And sometimes we want to keep repeating those really good, positive experiences. So the other thing that comes to mind about this is that when we just human behavior, human psychology is that when we're trying to stop ourselves from doing something, and we put a lot of emphasis on that, it creates this thing within us that we just do it, right? It's like when our parents said, don't do this, what did we do? We went out and we did it. The minute we say, I'm never having another Krispy Kreme donut again, is the next minute we're out having a Krispy Kreme donut. There's just something innately within us that oftentimes is making that statement. It's almost like a challenge to ourselves. So stop challenging yourself and just come up with behaviors and things that you want to do, so you don't have to be in the mind mess of trying to stop yourself from doing these things, and love yourself for the things that you really love to do and just do more of that. So I'm sorry there isn't just a one-hit wonder. I think you're right on it with the breath work. I think you're on it if you just start putting together some mantras, some affirmations, some activities that you know you want to do, and maybe in time frames like where you're most tempted to do something like alcohol, right? So if it's like 5 o'clock is the time to go, I don't know, start a happy hour, come up with maybe go play pickleball at 5 o'clock, right? So you just start switching your behaviors, start switching up your schedule, because you want to break the patterns on all levels, not just the thought patterns, not just the deviant behavior, not just how we feel about things, but our whole external environment. And that's where sometimes it can get difficult, but it doesn't have to be. And that's where it needs to stay fun. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have other clarity or questions around that, please do put it in the comments. I would love to hear. Okay, let's go to the next question. My dad just received a diagnosis of stage 4 cancer. He's in his 80s, but it's all a bit shocking. I'm wondering how to best support him. Yeah, this is a tough one. I don't think diagnoses like this, especially stage 4 cancer, is easy for any of us. But the first thing that comes to mind to say is we have to put our own oxygen mask on first. And we know that, right? We do know that. But that means sometimes the basics of, if you're tired and exhausted, go to sleep. It doesn't mean staying up all night researching every aspect of that disease. It means go to bed, clear your head, and get a rested state of mind for the next morning so that you can take care of things that are priority for you, and also put this into your priority list, right? But when these shocking things happen, it calls our attention, and then like everything sometimes just goes to that, and we're just like, I have to focus on that. And I'm just saying, no, we don't always have to just run to that. We want to prioritize that into our life. We want to prioritize it in a way that we're still putting on our oxygen mask first, because that is the best way that we're going to be able to help them, is when we do have, a rested, clear state of mind. Now, look, if you're not sleeping and you're worried about this, and you're up all night and you need to do that research, then do the research if it helps you sleep. But put a time limit to it. Say to yourself, I'm going to look at this for about 15 minutes. The other thing is, if you can help it, don't do it just before you're going to sleep. And if you have to do it, then find another meditation or something that you can do just as your eyes close and just as you're really going to fall asleep, and allow yourself to surrender into something that's positive, something that reprograms that subconscious mind away from some of the fear-based thoughts and into the more supportive thoughts, the things that are loving and supportive, mentally. So it depends upon who and what resonates with you. I have some that I could suggest. So if you want my suggestions, I'm happy to put them in the comments. Just let me know that you want them, and I'll put them in there, as far as some meditations that you might want to do just before falling asleep. Now, also, when you wake up in the morning, you may want to find some meditations that help get you on the right track, because what happens, that mind comes, boom, back online, and you start thinking about all the problems from the day before. What I would recommend is that you start thinking about, what's the priorities of my day? Yeah, it might be my dad's health, but what are my priorities as well? And where am I going to fit this in? And how do I want to feel today? That's a big theme here, is how do I want to feel today? And I'm not saying that you can stop yourself from feeling some way. I'm not saying shove down a feeling about being shocked or sad or any of those things. I'm just saying that you also want to think about, how do I want to feel today? I want to feel supported. So maybe that means that you set aside time to call a friend that you know isn't going to be in the shock of it, but that's going to be in the very supportive angle of it. And maybe that means there's someone that you don't call. And sometimes they're the people that are closest to us, because sometimes they create more trauma and drama for us simply by sharing the news. So just think a little bit about who is going to be that supportive person, no matter what it is that you have to say. I think that'll really help. I also think, because you're saying that your dad is in his 80s, one of the things that we as a society, I'm not saying this is you, but we as a society don't often do, which is really tap in to the mental health and the mental well-being of elderly people, because they oftentimes have a little bit more ingrained, I can take care of myself. I'm the adult. I'm the person that has to just deal with where I'm at in my stage of life. And getting them to talk it out is really important. And I'm not saying you force it out. I'm saying that maybe you touch it out. Maybe, it's like that you hug it out. You call it out. You touch base with them a little bit more frequently. Hey, just touching base. Right? Not like, hey, how do you feel every minute? No, but I'm just touching base. I just want to see what's in your thoughts today, Dad. What's going through your mind today? You don't always have to say, how do you feel? But you get in there and you kind of get some nuggets about where they're at, because mental health and wellness for the elderly is really important for us to just have a tab on. Right? Just have an idea of where they're at, because oftentimes they're struggling more than we know. And I'm not saying we have to take on all of their emotions and feelings as our own. So there is some discernment there we need to have. But I would really just make a mental note to just be on the phone, send a little text, and find ways of asking questions that don't feel invasive, but that are a little bit more intimate, right? That aren't just about the diagnosis, the prognosis, what we need to do about it. How are we going to keep you alive longer? That's where we often go to. It's really about, well, let's talk about how we feel, because we know people people all the time get you've got 3 months to live, and the person can live for, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. Why? because their mental attitude, because the support that they have, because the love that they feel, because the less fear that they have, that they're dealing with, right? So it reduces those cortisol levels. It allows them to feel more of the oxytocin and allows them to really just sit with where they're at in their life. So yeah, I think, support yourself first. And when you're rested and when you have a clear mind and when you're taking care of the things that are really important to you, and your dad is right in there, then everything can be in a little bit more balance, even at some of the times when it's really chaotic. We don't have to just drop everything and make something else our entire life. I know that's easier said than done as I sit here not having your situation, but I'm just suggesting that we don't want to get too caught up in the spin or down the rabbit hole, when sometimes it's just sitting in it and just feeling and allowing yourself to feel your feelings first so that you can better deal with it, and that doesn't have to get shoved down and then dealt with on a totally different scale sometime later on down the road. All right. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. One last thing I would say is there's probably a lot of support networks for cancer patients, especially for that particular type of cancer, whatever it is. I'm sure there are lots of support teams and systems in place that sometimes can be better. I mean, I know that we don't always want to call and talk to strangers, but sometimes talking to people that don't have the emotional charge around it, like our brothers, sisters, and other loved ones, sometimes that can just be refreshing. And sometimes there are people who have already been through that stage and they've got wise wisdom to tap into. So don't be hesitant to reach out to even some of these groups that aren't, your intimate, close circle of friends, because they can be really, really helpful. All right, let's go on to the next question. I had an important recital taking place, and one of my teachers, who has had a huge impact on my training, confirmed they would come. I was thrilled. It started raining that day, and a few hours before the event started, they texted and said they weren't going to be able to make it. He was the only person out of 30 confirmed guests that didn't make it, and it really bummed me out. Should I say something? There's so many different dynamics here. I don't know your relationship with this person, but I would say give them the benefit of the doubt. We don't know what's going on for everyone else. It could be that they really wanted to be there and they said yes, even knowing that their own life and plate was full. And that rain just tipped them over the edge, and they just said, I got to use this as an excuse, as an out, because maybe they didn't set their own boundaries earlier because of their love for you. So instead of sort of seeing it as, hey, you didn't, and I'm not saying you did this, but I'm just kind of getting a little feeling here that if you're feeling like, hey, did they not love me enough? Did they not care enough? Did they not, enough, that it might actually be the opposite. It might be that they care about you so much that they said yes when they really needed to say no. And that creates a little bit of a rub when we're disappointed and the emotions are high and we really wanted them there. And so it doesn't dissipate that. But I would say, yeah, you can call them and you can say, hey, I was so bummed that you weren't there. You were really missed. But I think when you can do it from a more neutral place and not from a place of like disappointment, then that guilt doesn't come through. And it doesn't feel like you're trying to, guilt them about not showing up for you. But it's more about just coming from that loving place of, hey, I just wanted to touch base. I wanted to see, what was happening for you and what was going on in your life, because I was so bummed that you weren't there. So it's also about that tone in your voice and the place that you come from, that's, more from that neutral state, that more wholehearted state of, I get you. I'm sure there's a reason. And if they don't have a good reason and you feel crappier at the end of it, at least you've been able to say and speak your piece. But just remember that not everyone is that great at actually saying what's going on for them or how they feel, or, even taking feedback from people. Like when you have disappointed someone, sometimes they really can't hear that from you because it makes them feel terribly uncomfortable. And they say and do things that are off from how they actually feel. They just don't know how. They don't know how to respond. They don't know how to be present for you and witness the disappointment that they caused. And it doesn't often mean that has anything to do with you. It has more to do with them and more to do with what's going on in their life. So just, be a little bit careful with that. But do speak your feelings. Just find that neutral place and space to do it so that it doesn't come across as a guilt trip on them. All right, let's go on to the next question. I am in a time of incredible abundance and opportunity, but my body is tired, in chronic pain, and craving comfort food like sugar. It doesn't seem to have the capacity to hold all that is here for me. What can I do to increase my body's capacity to take this all on in a healthy, sustainable way? Many things have just popped to mind as I read that. First of all, the craving comfort food like sugar. Yes, it's still your body, but it's your microbiome. It's your microbiome speaking to the receptors in your brain and the dopamine and all the chemicals that go on with your brain chemistry. I have a feeling you know all of that, but it's not just about the eating, but it's about that chemical connection that causes all of these emotions. And so you've got to get back to, first of all, not being hard on yourself for eating the comfort foods, but finding other comfort foods. So if it is like you need something sweet, have the apples, have the pears, have, things that are going to not have the same high fructose corn syrup type sugar effect. If it's, I don't know, if it's something else that you're craving, like a French fry or whatever, have some sweet potatoes that you can easily cut up and put in, virgin olive oil and do what do you call it? A broil or, a fry in the oven so that they're not deep fried, right? So, and sometimes it's a place, like, hey, I'm craving In-N-Out, or, like whatever it is, I don't know. And so think about what is the feeling and the emotion that you have around that place, right? So sometimes that's the comfort part, is you have memories about going there. Sometimes it's just the flavor of the food, but sometimes it's that you have people that you go there with. And so it might be that you need a little more support and camaraderie. And then that would mean, maybe I have my go-to people. Maybe I've got a neighbor that I say, hey, you know what, when I want to go and do that particular craving, can I call you? And can we just go and do a salad instead and like switch up the energy around that, right? So you kind of have that go-to person, or maybe it's just a phone call to a friend and say, hey, can you be my accountability buddy? I'm just feeling like I'm going to go down the rabbit hole with this pint of ice cream. Can I call you? Those are like, I know, basic tips, but they're things that just get you ahead of those craving curves. Because when you're tired, you just don't want to do it. But then you've also got the cheerleader on the other end of the line. So tap into that, see if that resonates for you. So that's one thing when it comes to, that microbiome and those dopamine hits that oftentimes food can bring to us. The other thing that you're talking about is your body's really tired. Now, I am going to assume that you are doing everything that makes sense, like getting more rest, that you're, doing the basics, right? That you're going to bed at a reasonable time, that you're not watching your electronics just before you fall asleep at night, that you're waking up and getting oxygen and exercise in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just deep breathing, or it's taking a brisk 5-minute walk, or it's doing a yoga stretch. It's something that gets you to come into your body and acknowledge your body and the vitality. Now, the other two, because the body, I think, is the obvious one. The other two are obvious, but we don't always pay as much attention to them. And that is the emotional aspect of it and what's going on in our mind. Now, I see those as two different things in this context. The emotional aspect is there something happening for me that's creating a lot of emotion and burning a lot of energy, right? Am I in heartbreak? Am I in, like what are the emotions, contemplation of some sort because of something that's happening at work? So what are those emotions that are draining us? And then the next one is the mind. What are the thoughts that are draining us? So maybe the emotions have a little bit more to do with someone else, like a relationship, and the thoughts have more to do with just those loops of things that are coming through, the self-judgmental thoughts, I'm eating this, I shouldn't be doing that, I should be doing this, right? And being a little bit more easy on yourself. The mind drains us more than almost anything. We can, we can run marathons, right? Because people have trained their mind. So we can do this. I feel like for you, it's the mind that's causing more of this. And the focus has been, and rightly so to some degree, on the body. I get it. That's good. Do that. Focus on the body. Get the body strong. Eat right. Get sleep. Do all those things we know. But focus also on, where are my thoughts? Because the thoughts are the things that are really dragging you down. Those are the things that zap our energy, and they just take us into a whole nother space. So I like to do something called mind monitoring, where, like, when I'm really in a crisis or I'm in a situation where I just know that I need to change something about what's happening, and I journal. And I journal about what are the thoughts that are going through my mind, or just make that mental note. Like throughout the day, you're like, whoa, pause. I'm tired. Wait, pause. What am I thinking about? What's crossing my mind? And are those things that you need to be putting that much energy into? Prioritization. This one I know that it's prioritizing the things that help us feel strong versus just drain our energy. And we do things a lot of times, especially work related, because we think we have to, we need to. And again, I would say, what is it that you want to feel going to that work meeting, especially if it's like extracurricular, it's an evening event, or it's something you have to do. And I know we have to do some of these things. We have to do the networking. We have to be involved in the social aspect of our job. So I'm not saying not to, but I'm just saying, like, how do I want to feel while I'm there? And then just going there and doing those things. Okay, basic, but let's say you're going to an event and you don't have a lot of energy, but you have to go. Then position yourself in places, if possible, where you can sit. Don't just run around or ask people, say, hey, you know what? I'd love to have a longer conversation with you. Or, hey, I'd love to have a few minutes. Can we pop over here and just, can we sit for a minute and have more presence with that person? Because what we don't realize is that when we're not present with one person and we're doing that, like, I'm having the conversation with you, but I'm looking over here, I'm checking over here, I'm looking to see who is, doing. I know we got to do some of those things, but I'm suggesting that the more present you can be with that person, the more you're going to get out of it with them. And then the more energy you're going to have when you turn to the next person. And also, if you can just take yourself out of the common area, and I don't mean you have to go to a totally different room unless you can and you want to, but I just mean, like, just get away from some of the energy when you're elbowing and out, you're like next to all these people. That stuff sucks energy out, especially if you're really an empath and you feel other people's energy, right? So create that bubble, that energetic bubble, but that physical bubble too. And, when you find yourself having to talk louder because there's so many people, say, oh gosh, I'm just recognizing that it's really loud right in this spot. Could we just walk over here? Could we just, have this little conversation on the side? I think you're going to find that some of those little tips really help when you're in the big groups. And then, of course, if you don't have to go to those groups, don't go. If it's a fear of missing out, or a fear of, or not even a fear, but just like, oh, I know there's opportunity there. It's like, well, what's more important right now? Is it the opportunity really, or is it that I just need to rest? And, is there someone that I can send on my behalf? Or is there another colleague that's going to be there that could give me some tips on, maybe some of my key customers or key clients? So sometimes those are great ways to not have to go as well, and buddy with someone, right? So that you're like, hey, I'll go do this one, you go do that one. So it's not like you're just not going because you're tired, but you're actually making a really conscious effort to tag team on some of these things. I hope that's helpful. Let me read the question one more time, just in case there's something else that comes forward, because there was a lot that was coming as I was reading it. The chronic pain, yes, so your body, as you know, is definitely telling you something. And if it doesn't seem to have the capacity to hold all of this here for me, yeah, then it's just too much. So start taking things off your plate, as difficult as that is. because that's what the body's telling you. And you know that. And I know that's frustrating. And you've just got to start coming down to what is the most important person, place, or thing that I need to do today. And who is going to make me feel the emotion that I want to feel? Who's going to help me with that? And avoid the ones that aren't, right? If it's that really terrible customer that's like, you're never sure if they're ever going to do anything that you need them to do to move the process forward, then maybe that's the one you cut out, right? Because you know you're not going to feel your cup is filled. And are you going just because you need your cup filled? I don't know. So dig into that. Just feel a little bit more about some of the emotions around it. So we talked about the body, which I think you're on. We talked about the emotional aspect, and then we talked about the mind aspect, which is the thoughts that are looping for you. And I think that's going to help you a lot with your energy outside of, seeing a doctor, a homeopathic doctor, all those things that you've probably already done to see if there's any hormones or anything that's off for you. But I'm not a doctor, so it's not my specialty. Okay, let's go on to the next question. How do I balance letting a teenager be a mainstream, conventional teenager? How do I like my own life when I want them to participate in some of my interests, even when they don't want to? Even if there are group activities with teenagers involved, but they are set against it. Specifically, self-development stuff and spiritual quests. Not expecting them to embrace, but at least be exposed to it. Okay, well, think about when you were a teenager. Did you want to do anything that your parents wanted you to do, especially your moms? No, because you were developing your own independence. And as much as we think we're parents to children, the day that they're born is the day that we have to start letting go. We have to start letting go. Yes, we're there to support them. Yes, we're there to coddle them. Yes, we're there to do all the things for them. But every step is a new step, right? Like letting go when they go to take their first step. Letting go when they stop breastfeeding, letting go when they take the first step, letting go, letting go, letting go, letting go when they go to school, right? Kindergarten for the first time, letting go when they date their first, girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, right? Letting go when they get their driver's license and they're driving a car. It's like, it's a constant letting go process. And I get the energy that you're trying to hang on. The other thing that comes to me is that the first 7 years of our lives is the years that we get programmed. So the programs are already installed. They're already installed. Now it's about sitting back and observing, not driving. You're not driving. You have to really let them go and observe and have fun observing who they are becoming. This is not the time that you're going to probably have that much of an impression on them. And when you observe and then you just take the leadership role of, I am going to continue to demonstrate what the behavior looks like that I want my child, my teenager to emulate, that's all you can do, is just show up and be that really upstanding, spiritual person that shows that you are focused on self-development. Like, hey, I'm going to do whatever it is. I'm going to do my yoga class today. And gosh, I so love it when I'm at that yoga class because I just feel like I get to calm my mind. Like, so you're talking about it from your perspective. And I think the other thing that comes to mind is that we always have to create curiosity with teenagers because they're hard to have conversations with. And they don't want to do anything that we're doing unless there's a curious aspect of it. The more we try to get them to do something we want them to do, the guilt trips don't work. I mean, they might for a while, but those only backfire in the long run. So it's about creating that curiosity, right? So there's lots of great things that I want to talk about on YouTube and on the show, and I answer questions, but I still have to come up with a thumbnail that grabs people's attention and creates curiosity. So that's what you have to do with a teenager, is create the curiosity and then just see if they bite on it, but have fun with it. Like, let's see, is he going to watch what I'm going to do? Is he going to participate? And when he doesn't, he or she, whatever the teenager is, you don't just go right to disappointment. Like, oh, they don't love me, or, oh, they don't want to be with me. They don't want to be with you because you're the mom or the dad. The teenagers, they are at such a beautiful place in their life. Just watch them grow. Just observe. and stop trying to be the driver, even though I know you're driving all the time. And that feels a little bit like a servant role, and it is, right? But that's what we sign up for with children, is we sign up to be their servant, so to speak, but in a very spiritually guiding way. And we do that by leading by example. I know. It's challenging, and the lack of conversations sometimes also make it difficult. We don't know what's going on in their brain, but just kind of think back to when you were a teenager, and it wasn't because you didn't love your parents, and it wasn't because you didn't appreciate them. It was just because you were trying to find your own. So that's all they're trying to do. Yeah, and learn from them, right? Because there's so much they teach us, and that's really the trick. Okay, I'd love if anyone else has any thoughts about teenagers. Please put them in the comments section below. All right, let's go on to the next question. I've been trying to plan a weekend with my two brothers. Dates never seem to work, and I've put a lot of effort into this. After 8 years of trying, I finally found a weekend, only to find that I had a small early morning schedule snag one of the days that would need to be accommodated. It really wouldn't impact the trip, but wanted to be transparent. Then one of my brothers bagged out, so it's frustrating. I want to give up. What do you think? Give up! Because have you ever asked them, do you guys really want to do this? Honestly, if you've been trying for 8 years, I have a feeling that you really want to do this, but they may not. And I would also just maybe consider another lens that you might just be saved from a really gnarly brothers weekend, because you have a fantasy about what that weekend is going to look like and feel like. And if these guys don't really want to get together, they're doing it out of their love for you, but they may not be wanting to have love between the three of you. I don't know about the dynamic. I'm just suggesting that it is a huge red flag that if you haven't been able to get this planned in 8 years, and then you've got a small snag and one of them pulls out, that's your answer for the last 8 years why this hasn't happened. And I don't know for sure that you've actually asked them if they really want to do this. So you got to step out of that fantasy of wanting it to happen, wishing it could happen, and thinking that you know what's going to happen if you did, right? Isn't that kind of what happens as we get these fantasies about things, and then, they're nothing what we expected. So I think there's great love there. I think that the universe has got your back on this one. And I think that spend the time with them individually and get beyond the idea that the three of you are going to get together. And I would just throw it out to the universe, meaning like you just say, I let go of this idea and let the universe plan this. If there's supposed to be a time, in fact, it's a weird example, but it's what comes to mind. You know how sometimes there's like a couple and they're trying to get pregnant and they try. And then as soon as they stop trying, all of a sudden, like, boom, they're pregnant, or they go try to adopt a child and then boom, they get pregnant because they've taken the emphasis off of that. And so I wouldn't be surprised that if it's meant to be, the universe will find a way to just miraculously get you all in the same city at the same time, doing something fun that isn't forced, right? And that you're just in there having a good old time. So it's a blessing. I really feel like it's a blessing. And I know that it's a heartache that comes with this dissonance between the three of you. Not having the same and equal desire, but you're good. And I would let it go. I wouldn't bring it up. I wouldn't talk about it anymore. And I would just love them both equally and find the time that you need to get that soul brother time with them individually. All right. I think we're coming down to the hour here, unless we've got any other live questions. I think we are good for today. As always, I so appreciate all of the questions. I love answering them. I love hearing your comments. I love, just really getting a pulse on the collective, right? Because a lot of these have themes to them that are running through as we go along. And you're going to find more resources if you go over to bethbell.me. There's the Awakening and Healing Handbook. There's the Psychedelics Resource Guide. There's the Herpes Handbook, and so much more. And we're launching quite a few things. So if you have a question, please type it in the comments, or we've got a new form now where you can type in bethbell.me/questions, and it's confidential, and we'll answer your questions in the coming weeks. So I appreciate you being here. Until next week, I wish you much bliss and love on the journey.